The women in their entitlement also threw each other under the bus. So even though they're suffocating, the other day there was like a whole march that I looked at rolling my eyes, like with a squint also. I rolled my eyes right next to just squint them. The way by a whole bunch of people lamenting against gender-based violence in this country. The grand majority of that crowd, they were all women. There were no men, so it was a women's march against gender-based violence. But a good 98% of that crowd was black. Every so often you saw a white woman, an Indian lady, a colored lady, but largely they were black. Because indeed, for good reason, black women are the ones that need to complain the most against gender-based violence, because they're the ones that are dying the most. They're not the only ones dying, but they're the ones that are dying the most, evidencing an epidemic of GBV perpetrators on the part of, in particular, black men. I rolled my eyes and I squinted them because in my heart, all I could think was, but you're hypocrites. What is it going to profit you, deadbeat, dumbo black women, to stage a march, some kind of a protest, you little idiots, and say stop killing us, when you are putting black women in a position to die at the hands of these misogynists? You leave your own women out, your girls out on a limb, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this video today. You cause black women to die, and then you complain and trend hashtag am I next, hashtag GBV once they're dead. So essentially you don't prevent deaths, you are hypocrites, is what I'm getting at. You don't prevent deaths, but when they happen, you feel like you're in a right and fit and proper position. You sirlamunyu to complain that why do you keep killing us? Listen, why wouldn't they? When you keep on coddling them, when you keep on stroking their dumb cheeks, when you keep on stroking their dumb njebes, when you keep on enabling them, helping them, causing them to marry women that they don't deserve, labatusa, to the point even of using witchcraft. You stand back and you do nothing. You are standoffish, you're aloof, and then when a woman is dead, you have the brazen audacity to lie down with a moment of silence on the grass, getting your outfit all dirty for nothing, complaining about the fact that men keep killing us. Stop GBV. Listen, maybe there might be a dent made in all of your laments, on behalf of all of your laments against GBV if you weren't such a hypocrite. So I was just rolling my eyes when I saw that news clip from one of the mainstream news networks in this country. I just saw this like band of miscreants worth of black women largely just out here lamenting against the fact that these boys keep killing us, but like why wouldn't they? You're the ones that are giving them knives and machetes to end us. You're the ones giving them ropes to finish us off. You're the ones in your envy that are so furious with it that you're helping freak end the lives of women that didn't have that nonsense coming. Litusa Shechem to rape Dinah. That's a story in the Bible. Black entitlement is such that within the black race, amidst black women, nobody wants them, any of us, to do okay. To a point where, listen, you will just stand back and do nothing and then lament against a grain in the community. The entitlement is within men, I'm going to give mine no matter what. And within women, I'm going to stand back and do nothing about that which wants to get its own because I'm in a severe competition with other women. Black people don't want black people to do right. They don't want black people to get ahead. And the remnant of us that are disinterested in this crazy culture, we're called Uncle Toms, Oreos, whatever you want to call it. And people are standoffish where we are concerned. And the things we call out are valuable, are viable. You know that an argument or a conversation is worth the while to carry forward. If it gets ignored last year, the ramifications of ignoring it this year are just freaking cataclysmic. When you are gazing at what has ultimately given because of you ignoring something important that was soapboxed or rated last year, on that day you're irresponsible when you don't repent. I don't know why the left in the US is not changing their minds, especially amidst the left black people. Why don't you get over yourself? That is the very nature of repentance. You're dumb and stupid, crazy, spinning on the spot like a dope yesterday. But then you realize that, oh snap, this ain't gonna get. This is not gonna do anything right for me. And then because you discover the folly of your initial ideology, you then change your mind. That is metanoia right there. That's repentance. When then you are awarded an olive branch to recognize the folly of your ideology, and you carry on with it anyway, on that day you are masochistic, you are destructive, you are into random genocide, you are the funeral of the country, you are the end of the life of the nation, you are the cancer in your own body, you idiots. And so therefore when you metastasize to the nth degree until you die, you had that death coming. You had that death coming. And black people, you have been given evident statistics on a board, a bulletin board, as to what your standing with darkness achieves, and yet you maintain your folly anyway. Therefore, what's gonna happen over here? Yes, we understand, do you with your zombie apocalypse. But amidst us, those who live among zombies, we are going to flee, run, until we can find a quarantine zone, a safe haven where there are no zombies. It's why I am actively trying to leave South Africa. And it is why a lot of black people that have noticed the grain within the black community are now being called Uncle Toms and all different kinds of weird other titles, sobriquets, and epithets, because they now essentially have immersed themselves amidst other races worth of communities, because they just could not handle black defeatism anymore. It's too much. By saying black people, and you create such a dystopian freaking nightmare for black people that don't want to be what under heaven it is that you are. You create such a dystopian nightmare that if there were no other races on earth, listen, there'd be nowhere for us to go. If there were no other races on the earth, we'd have no one to fellowship with. We would have nowhere to look if there were not other people on earth that aren't like you. Having started out indeed loving our own people and our own culture, just how destructive you are made us immigrate. And if at all nobody embraced us with open arms, took us in and treated us like we're human, we'd have nowhere to sit, nowhere to lodge. Listen, black people who are tired of this nonsense would have no friends if the only race on earth was black. So therefore, when you give us a whole chunk of grief for ending up with only white friends or only Indian friends or only whatever friends, what the heck, where was I supposed to go? In the Bible it is written that man, it is not man, Eve, Adam, when Adam was alone, the Lord said that it is not good for him to be alone. Essentially, fellowship and camaraderie with fellow human beings is important for people to feel like they don't live in some silo, some dystopian, devastating nightmare. It is imperative for people to immerse with each other, to mix, to mingle, to mesh. When then you deny a person meshing, when you deny a person mingling, when you deny a person fellowship with their fellow human beings, companionship, what the heck, you're literally killing them. You guys are committing homicide where I am concerned. This is freaking culpable homicide. If I were to end up dead, it would be culpable homicide. You could be prosecuted by a responsible judge, would rightly find you guilty for culpable homicide where I'm concerned. This is murder in the second degree, like in the worst way, because loneliness is academically murderous. It is provably deadly. So when you keep people lonely, and not keep, okay, when you insist that they be lonely, it's like you're killing them. It's like you're putting a noose around their neck. You are literally putting a gun to their head and pulling the trigger through themselves. It's murder by suicide. It's murder by suicide. Insisting on a person's loneliness is murder by suicide. So therefore, when people commit suicide, yes, you guys, it's unfortunate. I did law at university. If at all I had finished law, done an LB, and become maybe a judge in this country, I would have fought to create precedent for the case of culpable homicide on the part of people that have been abandoned and neglected so severely that they ended up committing suicide. I would have called for those people's relatives, people that were essentially responsible for doing that to them, who sabotaged the living daylights out of their lives. I would have called for there to be common law in precedent created to essentially make this murder in the second degree. I would have made it culpable homicide. I would have, presided over cases. I would have presided over enough cases and passed verdicts, enough of them to be precedent, to essentially create accountability on the part of people who set people up for failure until they commit suicide. Because it is a disease, it is an epidemic. South Africa is, I'm gonna sing just now, the second most deadly country to live in the world pertaining suicide. Second to no one but Russia. We've got the second highest freaking suicide rate in the world. Second to no one but Russia. When then we as a nation have got the second highest suicide rate in the world, it is imperative therefore that there be task forces sent out in public to interrogate what is causing suicide in this country, and if at all there is a freaking common grain popping out like a jack out of the box where we can identify wholesale sabotage and abandonment of people that wanted to live but couldn't. So essentially you're making like Canadian made medical assistance in dying. You are euthanizing people in the country. They don't want to die, but you're putting them on assisted suicide unbeknownst to themselves. So it's assisted culpable homicide. You are helping them die. You're euthanizing people. You're euthanizing the youth by keeping them unemployed. You're euthanizing lonely middle-aged men and women that have gotten no company encircling them, that you have put in that position because you have denied them access to atmospheres where they can actually mingle, mesh, and meet people that actually like them. Everybody will always have someone that is willing to hang out with them. And if at all you make it impossible for a person to find people with whom to hang, you on that day are disregarding God's command, God's recognition, observation in the Bible concerning Adam, where he said that it is not good for man to be alone, therefore I will make a helper suitable for him. God saw that it's not good for man to be alone. So you're going against that which is inherently in us as people. You're going against that which God himself identified as an error in our existence, loneliness. The Lord hates it enough to have created another human being for Adam. And then he said this at last, is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. When you take away people's bones of bones and flesh of fleshes, when you keep on killing people's husbands in human sacrifice rituals, when you keep on, never mind husbands, but friendship circles, anyone at all with whom to fellowship, when you insist that a woman is going to freaking menopause without getting children, even though she was extremely broody, you are literally setting her up for suicide. You are causing a woman, upon insisting that she is maintained as a spinster until she turns 50 and so therefore menopause, you are saying you are eventually going to die on the day when you start getting hot flashes, and when you start perimenopausing, when you start realizing that you can't have kids anymore, given that you will know that you can never have them, and given that your life that you're living upon looking around looks the way that it looks, given that your life looks the way that it looks, upon you scanning the periphery on the left and on the right, it is highly likely that on that day you're going to finally grab that damn noose and kill you. What the heck, when people are plotting and scheming with those kinds of machinations and cogitations at that height, listen, there needs to be laws that essentially prosecute people for trying to get people to kill themselves. there need to be enough voices and ears on the ground to gaze upon people's emotional and psychological conditions, enough to figure if at all this emotional and psychological situation is created, man-made, or if at all it is by happenstance, chance, because life does happen, and so you find yourself just really lonely. But if at all that life that happened was manufactured by other people, and there was a way to freaking prove that, listen, I personally would have advocated for it being made common law to send to prison for culpable homicide. When people finally commit suicide because they were locked on all sides, they were fired without cause, evidence was in support of them that they were innocent, and yet they were ignored for years. People deliberately sabotaged them. If at all it can be proven that there was active sabotage against someone that ended up killing themselves, I would fight to get that idiot arrested for culpable homicide. It might stop bullying. Do you understand? It might actually bring an end to bullying. It might bring an end to sabotage. It might cause people, you see, when you legislate, when you create policies, when you hook up corporate governance, basically tabling consequences to misdemeanors committed either in the office or out there in the wilderness, you hugely disincentivize people from committing those crimes or those misdemeanors or those infringements against corporate governance in the case of a company. You usually, listen, laws are there not so much to prevent people from committing them at all, but to hugely disincentivize them. And that's the reason why the majority of society is largely law-abiding. They don't want to get caught, neither do they want to go to prison. So therefore, when you legislate or when you come up with policies, rules, and regulations, you disincentivize people from acting a certain way. So if at all I was a judge, I would have created precedent in my court against this level of sabotage until people are freaking dead. I need the bathroom again. So yeah, in my dream, essentially me hanging after having committed suicide. Okay, that's what happened in my dream. I had committed suicide, and me hanging, and my shoes as I'm dangling, looking like Oreos. Essentially, that was the Lord showing me that they would have called you an Uncle Tom, and apparently you deserve to die. Tabaru, you would have called out black issues for what they are. Tabaru, you would have called a spade a spade. You would have died, and they would have done this in a clandestine capacity, essentially hiding it from everybody else, because I kid you not, right now I'm not alone. The thing that I am enduring, the incendiary activity of black people. There are plenty of people that are against the excruciating wickedness in this community. Mara, I appear to be alone because these people are sitting on my chest. They're shoddy, they're clandestine, they're secretive. And then I thought whole talk this morning, understanding what would happen. They would throw a freaking party. Occult organizations are just throwing a freaking party because yeah, well, I mean, did they not celebrate Charlie Kirk's martyrdom? Were they not up in arms out here, like hooting? Funeral, convoy, yelling baby, when Charlie Kirk died? Did people not go on the internet and celebrate the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk? We're living in a freaking barbaric society. Do you understand? When I live out like just a litany of barbarians that'll celebrate the death of somebody that was important for your souls. Amidst the only people on earth, because they're not many, that are still trying to help you understand that, listen, there is hell to pay in the end. Don't go there. We're giving the gospel. We're trying to restore society to sense. We're trying to make communities do better. And then we get killed. We get shot in the neck, and then there are people who actively celebrate that. So Labantu Lava would have celebrated my suicide the very same way that a lot of leftists celebrated the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk. And unlike Charlie Kirk, which is the absolute tragedy of my story, nobody would have seen me getting shot in the neck and then dying in front of the whole world enough for me to cause or spark a revival. Nobody would have watched me die. Nobody would have known I was killed. I would have slipped through the cracks. I would have disappeared. They might have felt guilty. My family might have been devastated, but no one would have known that I was murdered. I would have just been unsung. I would have gone down to the grave, having been murdered by a bunch of lunatics that would have celebrated in their cults, thrown a party once I died. And yet, in spite of that heinous way in which I would have been killed, I would not have had a side of the world that would then frown at this activity, mourn my death, realize I was murdered, book up memorials on my behalf, say that a travesty has happened, say that a senseless killing has happened, and so therefore comfort my family who don't even deserve it, because they would have put me in a position also to die. Those that would have killed me at these death rituals would have been celebrating my death with nobody comforting anyone that would have loved me, that this was wrong. The martyrdom of Charlie Kirk, there was a whole bunch of us that cried about it, that was sad, and that spoke the right speeches, that had the right voices on their tongues, had the right rhetoric, right speeches on their mouths. But when then you are killed in a hole, a ditch, by a bunch of devil worshippers, nobody will ever know. Only heaven will mourn. Only angels will mourn. But everybody else will just carry on with their lives as normal, and that's why I cry alone over the prospect of my suicide, over the fact that people are trying to kill me. Luckily one, because I'm not unique in my mission. I'm not alone in my resolve. I'm not the only person that thinks like this, but no one knows where I am and what's going on with me. And for as long as this little whore at YouTube is sitting on my chest, no one will ever know. And so art and culture, so that their shameless murder of me amidst their own cult members, that's what I gotta fight for, amidst those monitors, amidst their own cult members, amidst their own little deep state, their own little satanic hogwash nonsense rubbish that they're all doing, that there will be some there that will be just freaking uncomfortable. I have got to be so ornate, I have to be so colorful, so musical, I have to be such a songstress, and never mind the songstress, but just very artistic, creative, extremely ornate, for it to be a travesty even to them. They're dead, and they have to long. They have to be desperate to not be so freaking filthy. They have to desire to not be so evil. They have to see that they can't do this. I can advocate for myself in front of no one but these monsters, because inside all of them there is a human being, and some of them have been called by God. Some of them can be saved. Unlike this monstrous maniac of an occult boss that can't be saved, he's a hybrid. There's nothing he can do. There's nothing else that can happen. But there are some that work for him, that keep on tuning into my content, that watch me, that are essentially aware of the incredibly devastating travesty that this is. And my prayer is that one of them will essentially whistle-blow whatever the heck is going on with me. And like I said, there's also an investigation that the US is going to be doing. I spoke about how there are moles, betrayers belonging to the Trump administration that refuse to share this kind of information. I spoke about the one guy who reported this Chikwako YouTube to the authorities and was ignored. So there are people with a conscience. It's what I'm getting at. I am literally being flailed in front of abantu that are part of a syndicate, a criminal establishment, that are watching a woman die, get killed, murdered by abantu that are gonna finish this thing and listen. What happens to you when you watched a woman that did not have to die, that you were convicted shouldn't die? What happens to you when you hear in the grapevine that she did die, and not only that your freaking bosses are throwing a party because of her death? If you feel like trash today for watching me suffer and writhe like this, how much worse is your life going to be as you're walking around as a dystopian nightmare? How much worse is your ugly life going to be when then you are going to be aware of what your stupid country is doing, actively killing some of the best people because they don't agree? When you come to learn that the epidemic of gender-based violence in South Africa, it's not just crazy boys in all of their violence in all of their violent streak making a decision today to kill their girlfriends and wives, but it goes deeper than that. It has roots in the occult, because we watched a woman refuse to be uyinene, and yet she became her anyway. And then a man said, you're going nowhere, you're doing nothing, you're not going to budge, you're not going to move. I watched this happen, and then I realized that this thing is far deeper than just some lunatic making a decision to grab a knife and kill his girlfriend. It has spiritual roots, and the whole country is running off the steam of this thing. And they're just going to keep falling like dominoes, because we've got a whole bunch of nasty bosses belonging to big business, belonging to the political landscape, that are ruling with an iron fist, but that we are sycophants to, that we watched murder a woman. So even women even women that are super careful, they put them in a position to end up committing suicide, dog. She died because what was she gonna do? They were on her neck. George Floyd since she was 29. At 42. At 43. She couldn't push anymore. She just looked around and was like, God, when are you coming through? Listen, that's not going to be my story. I belong to Jesus. I'm not at the mercy of your freak bosses. They're going to die. But I'm here to make a point. You don't out of this, like it or not. But what's important to understand is that when I escape, it's going to be sad, because I'm going to be the one person that escaped. Why? Because of that which is the music I'm about to sing now. Because I just so happen to be among all of the victims of gender-based violence, all of the victims of black freaking dirty culture. I just so happen to be serious, really serious, like actually very serious with Jesus Christ. I was a true saint, and that's the only reason I escaped. Now, how many of y'all are out here walking around with your ancestral worship? Busy la mixer. Crash up, you're only able to see my content because you're little witches right next to Christians. Niema sontweni, Mara, you're also busy burning sage. Niema sontweni, but you're also busy visiting sangomas. Niema sontweni, but you're also busy out here. Niema sontweni, but you're also out here experimenting with transcendental meditation. Niema sontweni, but you're also a Leo, you're a Virgo, or Sagittarius, you're a Gemini. You're into random astrology, but you're in church every Sunday. Your prayers are nothing, they mean jack. You are aimless spiritually, you can't make a dent, there's nothing you can actually achieve. And so of course, you get spilled like your water. You ain't jack. To occult practitioners, they succeed to blow you away. And so after they blew you away, once only busy ubala the horoscope. Bese uyavakashila isangoma because vele ubusy nge-horoscope. God uzokulalela nini uma metse ubala horoscope. You're gonna supplement your job acquisition with a witch doctor. You blame God because I call it blaming. You then go and you blame God for giving you a job. No, I'm sorry, the Lord told you to wait. You are unemployed, but you could chill at home. Your grandmother family 700 rand every month. Here and there, here and everywhere. You had family that could take care of you. You had a warm bed at home, you wanted your own apartment. You had more than what you needed. You were comfortable adjusting. You were okay. You were not homeless. You were not out on a limb. You were not unable to feed Banabahau. You women that claim that, listen, I have 2 kids. Somebody got to take care of them. You know how it is in the black community. Everybody be taking care of everybody's children. Unemployed black women's kids are fat because ain't nobody gonna let a black woman's kids go hungry. And government schooling is free in this country. Listen, it's free. Because the burbs that cost a whole bunch of money. I was buying skelem. How do you get it? I was talking about free. And so because of that reason, because you don't want your children attending a school in Soweto that even gives them lunch. You know how a whole bunch of schools in Soweto are out here giving kids lunch? Because it's a free school, it's a government school. Their education is free, their books are free, everything is free, including lunch. They eat eskolweni. Because when you don't want to be downgraded by your children having to eat amagwenya eskolweni or ama beans and bread. What's eskolweni? Because you don't want your children drinking tea. You want to give them a liquid fruit inside captain the compartment, little grapes, little Oreo. When now important. When now look at school where they're gonna be paying 4,000 rand fees per month, whereas you can send your children to a government school for the duration of time when you don't have a job. I had plenty of colleagues at MTN who went to schools in Soweto when I was on the come up because I was an immature, snobbish child growing up. But then when I was 17 years old, I snapped out of thinking that kids from schools in Soweto ain't jack because I dated one when I was 17. I dated a guy that went to St. Matthew's high school and primary when I was 17, and I was besotted with him. And I was surprised at how good his English was. When I got 17 going on 18 years of age, there was not 18, so 17 or 18, but rather at 19, first year of varsity, when I was 18 going on 19, there was when I was 19 years old, there was a chick that was also our age that was a graduate from St. Matthew's Primary School that was also doing first year of Linna. I knew her when we were all in matric, and first year and somehow you came to Wits. So those kids graduate in Kasi schools, go to the same universities as us, and then they end up working in corporate South Africa. When I was in corporate South Africa, a whole chunk of my colleagues were guys and girls, men and women that attended ghetto schools in their respective provinces where they grew up, from Limpopo, from Polokwane, from Gauteng, Memangena, Ikolo, or the Kasi. So essentially my underestimation of kids from the Kasi didn't make any kind of sense. And also when I was at Wits University, some of the best students there were from Kasi schools. And also matric in this country, if you are in a government school, some of the some pretty expensive government schools in this country where parents pay fees. Now they are in the suburbia, and that's why they're so expensive. They write the same exams for matric as government schools in the Kasis. The ones in the rural areas everywhere, they all write the same matric paper. They all write the same matric papers for maths, for science, for whatever. They write the exact same final papers in government schools. Private schools write different papers across the board, but qualification criteria is pretty much the same to enter university for private or government schools. There's just a different grid, I guess, that they use to determine whether or not students get admitted into university using private school versus government school. But most of the schools in this country are government, and some of the more expensive government schools that take fees and where they don't feed children, whatever, essentially they're very lani, like the one that I went to. Right, they are kind of like snobbish, but government schools nonetheless. Listen, exact same curriculum, to a point where we write the exact same paper in matric. They write the exact same papers in matric. And so therefore it makes no sense at all to insist when you are broke like a leg, when you're a mother that don't got no money at all. It's a constitutional right for children to get an education up to matric in this country. So frankly, you can get arrested in South Africa as a parent when your 16-year-old child is sitting around at home. Not so much as a high school dropout that doesn't want school, but wanting to go to school but not taken to school. You can get arrested for basically humiliating the human rights of your own child. That child, all they need to do is either go to a police station or to the nearest school, and if at all the teacher there knows her stuff or the principal, essentially report this child to the authorities, to the Department of Education, and this kid will be taken to school with or without their parents' permission. So even child-headed households, the children therein don't even pay for fees, and they can get at least one meal from school a day. That's how it works in these South African streets. That's how it works. The only place where you're not entitled to an education by the government is from higher learning, but from grade 12 down. Nobody in this country has any excuse at all to not have matric. So therefore, for those reasons, people who feel as if though how am I going to pay my child's fees? How am I going to pay my children's school fees if I don't have a job? And then you end up consulting a sangoma. Listen, if you're unemployed, take your kids out from private school and move them to a government school. I actually knew of 2 kids back in the day. The brother committed suicide because of busno bunjefela. The third thing, he was arrested, and because he was arrested, the kids had to downgrade, but they used to attend Maragon Primary High School, which is a very expensive private school, and they took the kids out from Maragon to some government school, Hona in the burbs, that also has fees, but not as much as Maragon. And this boy was just so afflicted by not being in a private school that he committed suicide. It was unfortunate. But the sister, because of all those situations that she was in, the dad's friends basically played musical chairs with the child, Bamtat. And for a season, she was staying with my mom. And that's when I heard her very, very sad stories. But what is important to understand is that girl would have never been out of school if at all she is a South African child. She even was not even so downgraded that she went to a school in the Gasi. She just moved to a government school. So children are not the issue. If at all you have any kind of family, if you have a grandmother and a mother, look at my particular life. If you've got immediate family at all, they will tend to, even though they might give you attitude, like what's happening with me, at least feed you because you're theirs. They will make sure you're not hungry, even though they will not be prepared to pay expensive school fees for your children. They will not be prepared to take your kids to McDonald's. They will not be prepared to take your kids to Rand Easter Show, to Gold Reef City. They will not be prepared to take your children on holiday go Durban. They will not be prepared to take your children on holiday go Durban or Cape Town because it costs too much money. The past couple of years, I've seen recently as maybe like 3 or 2 months ago, my mom and my baby sister went to, is it Zimbabwe or Mozambique, one of them countries, on holiday. Nobody even dared invite me because I don't got no job, I don't got no money. But guess what? You got food, girl. And for a few days, I wasn't too sad about it because I got this work to do. Plus, I would never go on holiday with any of my family members. I'm too busy. I cannot go to have set me up for failure. Like, Papa, I just don't care. So I would not have agreed to go with them if they offered. But what is imperative is that they go on holiday while I sit around and do nothing. But they make sure that I have water, shelter, basic necessities. That's how it is in these defeatist black streets, where you are not going to help your own family member either get a job or do so well that they can take themselves on holiday, but you're not going to let them go so hungry that from malnutrition. They will have to be delivering groceries to your jarata, and that's just about it. And even then, it's cool beans, canned fish. So if at all you can eat canned fish and not die, if at all you can eat cool beans and not die, and if at all your children can wear a school uniform that, yes, your auntie, your uncle, your grandmother might be willing to buy school uniforms or bantwana, because indeed those must be purchased even for kids that go to government schools. But there are drives to get school uniforms to children that can't afford them in very low level public schools. But schooling for children, insofar as parents pass a means test, they have to do that because we pay for that with tax money, and parents who can afford to pay fees do pay fees, right? Parents who can afford to pay fees must pay fees. But the kids that can't pay fees, parents have to prove that they can't pay fees. Essentially, they have to pass a means test. And once they pass a means test, in other words, I'm unemployed, I've been unemployed for 2 years, then your child can come to school, they will get given books, they will be eligible for donation of school uniforms, they will get 1 meal a day, they will be put on a roster versus the kids whose parents are paying fees. So if at all your child can then get a decent education, there's also a friend of my little sister's that endured that. Her family went through a hard time. They initially started out at some private school in the south of Johannesburg. That's where my little sister met her. She was a very intelligent young girl, a student. They had to downgrade so badly that they moved to Soweto, and this child had to also move to Soweto. And listen, you go from a private school in the burbs, and then you end up in a public school in Soweto, called Protea. it was to her like, my family's going through this. The child was mature enough the kid was mature enough to be like, listen, my family is going through this. And at the time, my little sister was not that shallow. She's been made a little monster by my family, right? And for her, it was like my best friend had to move out of the school that we used to go to, and she's now attending Kokasi. And so she was still friends with her for a season, but then she moved to high school. Then she moved to higher levels of high school and became really shallow. And so they kind of like stopped being friends, whatnot. But that chick, from what I understand, matriculated and she was still killing it with her whole snobbish Lonnie English that she learned in the initial stages of her high school. Like I made mention, I dated a couple of guys, not just one, all right, that were from schools in particular Soweto, and they didn't speak broken English. They were not here. And also colleagues that I worked with. Therefore, listen, in the black community, nobody has an excuse to consult Amasangoma when you are umzalwan. None of you have an excuse, because your parents would have housed you in a bedroom. Fine, you're 37. You're not the youngest to be at home, but you're going through a rough patch, and every day there was something in the refrigerator, and that something in the refrigerator, nobody's going to be passing you shit and giving you grief for eating it. You might not have the comforts of this world, and you might not be able to pour full tank of petrol in the car that you at least managed to pay off before you lost your last job. You lost your last job, and your family members are willing to part ways with maybe like 500 or 700 rands every month to help you get a job, because you still have to have enough airtime who phone and who drive around, go to wherever to try and make connections. But we choose, they'll leave you alone for the better majority. But they're not gonna starve you. So that is the reason under heaven why you chose this nonsense. And so because you chose this nonsense of yours, now your prayers are hindered. Now whatever it is that you take up to heaven, whatever you call to the sky, even it hits a brick wall, God looks at you like, whatever, I don't know you. Depart from me, work of iniquity, I don't know you. Because when you had Lucky Star canned fish, fine, you're 35 without a job. But listen, I am the author of time, so I don't look at time the way that human beings look at time. I don't look at your wombs, women, the way that the world looks at your wombs. Oh, I'm 35, so I have a geriatric womb, and then you are to be running to marry any kind of idiot. Listen, there is such an epidemic of witchcraft and dating, and such an epidemic of gender-based violence in this country that you can't afford. With your chat and Jemasisha, women, listen, there is a man right now, and he is a most heinous, diabolical beast. And also we said and because he's got a lot of money. He's a wealthy man, but listen, he's a wealthy man with a litany of STDs, including HIV, right next to a very bereft wife, soon to become ex-wife, because she is sick and tired of who is a prolific devil worshipper that can even breathe underwater, a mixed breed, a hybrid. So when you let yourself marry anyone, because you're 35, yes, like you could end up married to that guy. Not only flames spiritually. He's gonna make your life a living nightmare. Who's over very fiffy, dark in your house. Stop because in 35, 37, 38, 41, you don't know what the heck you're marrying. South Africa in Iditsila man holy fifi mo. And I just highlight to you Uguti. I'm prepared to do for me. There is nothing that God is not prepared to do for me. Even Jesus Christ himself, when he was being taken away by the soldiers in the Garden of Gethsemane, after Peter chopped off the ear of that one soldier man, Christ was like, do you not think that my Father could send me battalions upon battalions, legions upon legions of angels to set me free from all these who beleaguer me? Essentially, I am, what do you call this? I'm paraphrasing, of course. Long story short, there are plenty of resources from heaven to set me free from this rut. But God always has a reason for keeping his children in a certain situation. Christ was kept in that bunch because he had to die for us, atone for our sins, propitiate. That was his mission. That was what he was sent here to do. He became sin for us that we might become the righteousness of Christ, of God in Christ. He humbled himself to the status of a man, that we might indeed be able to relate with him. Committed no sins, however. Being fully God, fully man. He atoned for us in that fashion, so that had to happen. But it was so daunting that he even sweat blood in the Garden of Gethsemane upon facing this particular feat, right? We sweat blood, even in our proverbial gardens of Gethsemane when we're freaking out about what we have to endure. But what is always true is that God can unleash battalions upon battalions of angels to this cause and end this misery right this minute. But he doesn't. Why? Because listen, who would you have to relate with, you who have no God? Upon enduring this level of witchcraft and like epidemic of nonsense in this country, who under heaven would you be able to relate with? And so therefore see your need for Jesus Christ, see your need for the Lord, see your need for the Messiah. Who would you have to relate to, if at all Christians? Because indeed God has that power to do that. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Our God is in the heavens. He does whatever he pleases. Listen, nothing is too hard for God. So God can indeed make every last one of our lives hunky-dory Mary, just swinging on a hammock. The devil indeed is our adversary, and he fights as he makes war with us. He does a strange thing where we are concerned, but he is subject to God. And just as he is subject to God, therefore, the Lord can simply say to him, no, not that one. Oh, no, don't do this, don't go. So, yeah. So if at all it was within God's prerogative to ascertain that Christians go through nothing at all, no sorrow, no pain, if that was not part of the gospel story, if that was not part of our lot, if at all the world did not hate disciples, if at all God made it that way, then our lives would be peachy, hunky-dory. Our lives would be smooth sailing and easygoing. And there will be nothing that you can ever do to actually truly harm us, like hurt us in any way. Like you could do invincible, untouchable, like MC Hammer. God could have done that with us, made us untouchable, titanium, bulletproof. He could have made sure that as soon as you have the Holy Spirit and you are born again, nothing will ever come at you that is negative. You will have a life of health, wealth, and prosperity, and you will have no qualms. It is within his vats to give that. After all, does God not have a storehouse even of snow to judge the wicked? That is the God that we serve. However, that is theologically inaccurate. That is untrue of how the gospel works. Judgment does begin with the church of the Lord Jesus Christ, and Christ himself. We are able to relate with him because he went to Gethsemane, not Gethsemane, but to Golgotha. Because he endured that weakness, that temptation, and yet did not sin. Because he was fully man, we can robe ourselves in his endurance, and so therefore feel able to put to death the deeds of our bodies. For Christ did it. We can face death with bravery, like Polycarp, like Jesus, like Peter, like Paul, like all the martyrs that have come and gone. We can endure that which Christ went through, and indeed go through this narrow road that leads to life that only a few people find. We can succeed to go through all that, precisely because God, who did not have to but did, went through it. He humbled himself to the status of mere mortal. That was, however, also fully God, that we might be able to endure that which we must now endure to enter his rest. So we can relate, right, with Jesus. And that's why he's so easy to embrace for those of us who are given that ease. Those of us who are awarded that relatability with Jesus Christ, because not everybody is going to be given that. After all, the Father is the one that draws us to the Son, right? Those of us who are given it, it is so easy for us to just run with what Christ is out here trying to do. We consider it bizarre, rather, for people to carry on with their incendiary activity. We don't understand why they are of the imagination that they're going to get, anywhere. We can't figure it out. We can't gauge it with any level of prosperity, even in the slightest. Well, why are trying to move us away from God? Because to us, it's like, who neglects so great a salvation? We get stuff like that. And so because we understand things like those, it is bizarre for us that they do these weird things. But it is also bizarre for them that we do these what they call also weird things. For the things of God are as foolishness to the man who is perishing. Thus, God makes it such that, just like with his son, the world, in order for them to embrace the cross, just as we embrace Jesus already, those of us who evangelize in these streets, he makes it such that the world can relate with us. Because if at all we can't come and meet you halfway with your pain and your sorrow, with our own devastating stories. If at all I can't explain to you what I'm enduring at the hands of merciless men, if what I'm enduring at the hands of merciless women, how in the world, me not basically having a gargantuan, just mammoth silver spoon in my mouth, how in the world are you who are just groveling through the mud, struggling to make it through the day? You who are menaced by the elements, how are you going to look at me with any kind of reasonable favor? When listen, I don't know jack about what you're going through, but hey, guess what? Jesus Christ is Lord. I can't really relate, I'm sorry, but you know what? Christ might. Like, enter in and just see for yourself. No, people gotta see for themselves. Our witness, our testimony. We overcome the devil by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So Karabo goes through essentially what would be the tantamount of hell on earth, because Christ went through hell on earth, and yet more than conquerors. Romans 8. He went through hell on earth and more than conquered. So greater is he that is in us than he who is in the world. In this world you will have much trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. I am overcome the world, right in a jam. The Lord has overcome the world, so we must take heart. That is what the Bible gotta say. Yeah, so what Christ overcomes, we are then given bravado to overcome it too. We're given happiness to endure it. That's why the Bible says consider it pure joy when you go through trials of different kinds, right? 1 Peter 4 over there, it's only pure joy because in the presence of God, of Jesus, there is fullness of joy. The Proverbs of 31 women can laugh at days to come, even when there is, nothing to laugh at, because there is just an excruciating gladness, because it's painful for the wicked, in the hearts of the righteous, even when they're going through hell on earth. In my last video, I spoke about Paul, and I said initially that it was Barnabas, but no, it's not Barnabas. By then, I believe him and Barnabas had already agreed to disagree and gone their own separate ways, but it was Silas. Paul and Silas, in that jail, their shackles and their chains fell apart, and so were the prison bars open, doors. The doors, they were open, and they did not escape, and so that's how that guy survived, the prison warden, precisely because God was gunning for that prison warden. And so breaking the shackles of the feet of Saul, of Paul, and Silas, and everybody else, and then yawning the prison doors. God was gunning for the soldier, or the prison warden. That's who God was after. So when God is after you, he will put Saul, not Saul anymore, but Paul, and Silas in a prison where they will sing worship music until prison bars open, and then you will see that, oh my goodness, my thing that I'm doing is not going to pay. My thing that I'm doing is not going to pay. And so therefore give your life to Jesus, and then you will get baptized, and all of your family with you will also get baptized. The Lord is gunning for the unrighteous when he endures the righteous through what is called hell on earth. When the Lord endures us, listen, I don't know what in the world is going on. There's all these weird things happening, almost as if though my keyboard is over there, like my computer is acting up, like ingati I pressed something, but I'm definitely not sitting on my keyboard, and neither am I. Whatever, listen. It's old. Yeah, it was for the sake of Saul and Silas. Not Saul and Silas, sorry, but they were already born again. It was for the sake, you see, God could have prevented the arrest of Saul and Silas. Smooth going, like the World Health, Wealth and Prosperity Movement believes. Best life now. God could have decreed, because it's within his power to do so. Our God is in the heavens, he does whatever he pleases. He could have decreed that my saints will go through no toughness at all, roughness at all. It's going to be smooth sailing all through and through. So no arrest, but when is the warden ever going to get born again? When is the warden ever going to get born again? When? Hey, him and his whole family. That's what the Bible says. Unless he was able to observe God's supernatural release and deliverance of Saul, Silas, and everybody in that prison because of worship music. If he had not made observation of that, overcome the devil by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, that man would not have been born again and today be in heaven right with his family. There is a reason for our suffering. It's not that God has no power to deliver us from it. There is a reason for our suffering. It's not that God does not have power to deliver us from it. And that's the reason why when you are suicidal, like heavily, really just take stock, sit back, watch Bible movies, watch Bible stories, realize, again, read the actual Bible and realize from all of those stories. I would give you counsel to actually read in particular stories like the story of Manasseh, the story of Josiah, the story of Hezekiah, the story of Elijah, Elisha, the story of Ahab and Jezebel, the story of essentially just to basically get a healthy understanding of how God deals with wickedness and how he's always been and how he is maintained as that thing. And then remember the benefits of God in your own life that you can recall, because listen, a lot of y'all have memory of what God has done before. He has not changed. Same today, tomorrow, and forever. See, when you wear biblical veracity, it enables you to recognize the immutability of God. And if God is immutable, he hasn't changed. And also recognize that in the Old Testament especially, there's so many silences on the part of God. I mean, there was this one story, like Storisa Gideon. I'm just getting into, I need to sing, right? So that when I talk, I'll just be, with liberty to do that. But anyway, yeah, Gideon, the story of Gideon, you know what was the state of Israel in those seasons. There were these, was it Syrians? Well, when I told him, like, listen, my computer is so crazy slow that I cannot Google it. I don't know why I've forgotten so quickly. Yeah, but they were just these, was it Amalekites? No, Syrian. I feel like it was Syrian, but I stand corrected. But they were just, I think it was Syrian, yes, like these Syrian people and a soldier batch, essentially. Or am I that's the story of Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat was the Moabite and the Ammonites and the Edomites, right? But with the Syrians, with Gideon, it was, I believe, Syria. That was just all up in his grove. Listen, I stand corrected. I can't Google it because there's no internet over here. But get those facts. But you know what the heck was going on over there? Yes, they were being harassed to a point of living in caves by that neighboring country that had such a strong army and such bullies therein that every time at harvest season they would steal their harvest, their crop. There was hunger for 7 years. They were endured through this. There was hunger. There was hunger in the land, and people were scared. Not only were they being starved and their crops being stolen at harvest time, their sons were being taken as slaves. They were just ravaging women. They could not just walk out in the open field. If at all one of these soldiers were to walk by, they could just grab a woman, rape her, or grab a guy and make him a slave or even kill him. Gideon's own brother was murdered. And Gideon, when he was called by the Lord, was inside a wine press, out here trying to separate wheat without the wind, because he was running, he was trying to eat that which was harvested, given that these people were stealing all their crop. Everything they made, every money they made, every wealth they made was taken. They stole their livestock, they stole their harvest crop. And God called Gideon in that space and then conquered that entire army with nothing but 300 soldiers. There were tens of thousands of the opposing army. It is believed, I think the number is 38,000. Gideon and his 300 men, not just 300 men, but eventually in the end, the rest of Israel joined the party, and 38,000 soldiers from that camp because the battle was always the Lord's. When you read or when you listen to stories like those, listen to them, watch them on YouTube, listen to an audio tape, or read it in the Bible. When you read such stories as these, it should give you hope when you are beleaguered that God is not subject to human indiscretion. God is not trapped by human decision. God is not shaking in a corner or wincing or scratching his head on some, listen, I keep trying to send Garabo 300 rands and it doesn't get to her because there is John standing in the way. Swusiso is standing in the way. I mean, the Swusiso, what am I going to do with him? What the heck? No, he's gone. He's in the heavens. He does whatever he pleases. He can just whammy that bugger out the way at his own commanded call in Jefela and J. But he enables spiritual war for Christians in order to strengthen our souls, in order to indeed achieve the prosperity of teaching a child delayed gratification, and also teaching a child, never mind delayed gratification, but working for your food. It was our judgment after Adam and Eve fell, that from now on you will work by the sweat of your brow. So we have to work for our food. We have to work for our gain. Whatever it is that we acquire, we must work for it. Because thanks to us falling, entering God's rest now became a striving. We were awarded it on a silver platter at the garden, and we fell apart, and thanks to Adam and Eve, now that we fell apart from that which was our smooth sailing lives, because listen, they used to exist.